Okay, so we are live. Quick intro on my end. My name is Chumo Koro. I'm a senior software engineer at Bloomberg.
Mhm.
I also do career coaching and I write articles on Medium. But yeah, could you tell me a little bit more about yourself and what you would like to get accomplished today?
Oh, yeah, sure. So my name is Kashyap, and I'm currently a master's student at the University of Washington in Seattle.
Nice.
And I've been working as a software engineer for around 4 years now. So a bit of a backstory. So I started my master's program last year, or rather a couple of years back in the September of 2021. And before that, I was a full-time software engineer in India. That's where I did
Nice.
my undergrad in computer science, and I moved here for my master's. So as soon as I moved here, I started working with the undergrad department at the campus to work on this internal applications, which the students of UW and the professors use for getting more information on the classes to take. So it's like the official ratemyprofessor.com meant for the UW students.
Nice.
So I was working with the undergrad IT department to design that app and push that app uh, out for the students and professors. And last summer, I interned at Accolade, which is a healthcare company based out of Seattle. And I worked as a senior, not a senior, a software engineer, but focused primarily on front end side of the product.
Okay. And yeah, that makes sense. So then I guess what do would you like to get accomplished today?
Oh yeah, so I would just like to get a review on my resume.
Okay.
Uh, I did send you an email with my resume as an attachment.
Yes, I have it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to know if I'm putting my resume in the best possible way I can to showcase my skills and my experience because with the current market scenario, every company is looking for senior engineers. And although I do have a 3 year experience back in India, but in the United States, I only have a 6 month experience at the campus and 6 months of internship at Accolade. So these people generally do not take into consideration my Indian experience. I think that because every recruiter I speak to has been telling me that we are looking for someone who's more experienced and who's more well versed with um, the software side.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we can look at it, your resume. I guess you said every recruiter, so does that mean you've already been applying with your resume and they've been telling you
Um,
no, we're gonna put you in as like an entry level or an intern or
yeah. So I'm
I
looking
see.
for full-time opportunities. I
Yeah,
plan to graduate this summer,
yeah.
and I've been reaching out to a ton of recruiters, and everyone I speak to says the same thing. We're looking for someone who's more experienced. So I guess they're still considering me as a student because I'm currently in my master's program,
Hmm.
but none of them is considering my experience back in India.
Right.
So back in
Were you
India, I was
working
working.
full time? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I was working full time while I was doing my undergrad. So in my junior year, I joined the company as an intern, and within a span of 2 to 3 months, I moved to a full time position in that company. So I was studying and doing my full time software engineering job in parallel.
I see. That makes sense. And then so when did you graduate from your I guess we can just look at your resume and kind of go from there. So yeah, I have it up here. I'm gonna share my screen. Can you see this?
Oh yeah, I can.
Okay. So here, let's reduce this. Okay. So yeah, interesting. Okay. So I look at your resume. Okay, you have LinkedIn, all that stuff. That's good. I'm seeing a lot of numbers. That's good. Quantitative data is always good. So that's a good positive that about your resume that I usually don't see in other people's resumes.
Thank you.
Um yeah, 200%, 30% increase. We love that. 50% managed, mentored, achieve faster performance, high performing, deployment. Okay. It makes sense. I guess the first thing that kind of stands out to me is that you have a software engineer internship as the most recent thing you've
Mhm.
done. And I guess it makes sense now to me why recruiters would see would see you and be like, okay, we're looking for someone with more experience. If they're looking for someone with 3 to 5 years of experience, because just the fact that you were doing a software engineering internship as your most
Mhm.
recent role indicates to them that you don't have, full software engineering experience, mid-level, senior role experience. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you look past that, I see software engineer at University of Washington, senior software engineer at Hirect from 2018 to 2021, remote, okay. And then you have an internship. And then when did you graduate from college, from your bachelor's degree? I would include that.
2020.
2020.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that kind of makes sense in that. So a lot of times,
Mhm.
and I've experienced this too, where you might have done several internships while in college, because I was in the same position where I interned at MasterCard, JustWorks, this place, that place. So I had a lot of working experience before I graduated. But then
Okay.
when I graduated, they still put me into an entry level role. And I was asking them, I was like, oh, why are y'all putting me into this entry level role? I already have experience. But they only consider experience after you graduate as full-time
Okay.
experience.
Okay.
So you're
Got it.
saying that you're working a full-time job as a software engineer while you're getting your bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily, many companies, while I think it should be considered, many
Mhm.
companies aren't necessarily considering that. Um,
Okay.
but
Okay.
I guess everything after that, and it's a little bit difficult to tell with the way your because you don't have the dates for when you graduated and all that stuff. So it's hard for a
Okay.
recruiter to tell, oh, like he graduated in 2018 and then he was working from 2018 to 2021. Like it's hard for them to see that, um because you don't have those dates. And then it's also like I see software engineer intern, okay, and then senior software engineer right after that. And then you said you started this Hirect job 2018. You were still in college when you started it. So
Yeah.
did you
So,
start as a senior software engineer?
oh no. So
And
I
then
completed. Sorry. Go on.
yeah. No. What were you gonna say?
So yeah. So just after I completed my stock area, so the first internship I did in my junior year, I worked over there for 5 months, and after that I joined Hyreed again as an intern. But they decided to hire me as a full-time employee after my internship. So I continued and I jumped the ladder in 3 years. And the last position I had was senior software engineer before I moved to the US for my master's.
That makes sense. So that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, when someone sees your resume, they don't also hear the explanation that you're giving to me vocally.
Yeah.
From my perspective, I see this resume and I'm like, okay, you're an intern and then suddenly a senior software engineer, and then you went back to an internship a couple years later, like a year later, and it's like, so they're thinking that, they're probably thinking, oh, title inflation, where, someone is working at, a company as an intern, but they just say software engineer, or they're like an entry level engineer. They just say senior software engineer because
Uh-huh.
there's so many discrepancies. And
Uh-huh.
you see what I'm saying? And the biggest one is the fact that you're interning after you're working full time.
Oh.
Everyone's going to be thinking, why are you an intern if you were already a senior software engineer?
Mhm.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it conflicts with one another. So they might even be thinking, oh, is some lying going on? And I don't even want to assume that or whatever, but they might be thinking that, like, oh, is he lying? Like,
Mhm.
like senior software engineer a year before doing an internship. So
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah. Got it.
So, but I guess looking at the individual, like increased profits by 10K in 1 month by designing and developing features on blah blah blah, boosted user experience, user flows, architected enterprise user facing product. perform testing using Jest. Okay, that's something. Improved app performance, reducing tech debt, collaborated APIs, skills. Okay, so I'm just looking at this first section, right? I'm
Sure.
not really understanding what you did technically.
Okay.
Meaning, so you improve app performance. That's good, but I think what's more important is what you did to improve app performance. Did you
Okay.
create, you said optimizing integration with backend RESTful APIs. So like were they doing, were they hitting one API that was slow and then you built three more APIs and resulting in app performance by 3,000 milliseconds? Like you want to focus for all the bullet points, the focus of the bullet point should be what you did. So did I create three APIs? Did I, you said architected an enterprise user-facing product. Like it's so many words and I still don't know. Like I'm reading it and I'm gonna put my thumb up once I understand what you did on that bullet point. Architected an enterprise user-facing product for 50K plus users, which reduced support tickets by 20% and saved 20K by conducting user research, created design systems, and performing testing using Jest. Okay, that's the only time. It's only until I get to the end that I
Okay.
understand, okay, something that he might have done, right? Because you said performing testing using Jest. Okay, so I'm thinking, did you write unit tests? Did you write integration tests? Like, but that's the only piece, that's the only morsel of real concrete, specific information in that entire bullet point. When you say architected and enterprise user-facing, like it literally means nothing, right? Like I
Okay.
know it has meaning, but to someone who's reading it and doesn't know your experience and all that, they don't really know what you did when you say architected. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know if that does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. So
Yeah, like yeah,
I assume you're saying that from a point of view of a recruiter because they do not
yes,
have as much technical information or knowledge as we engineers do. So
yes,
they're looking for plain simple English rather than
yes,
these. Okay, makes sense. Gotcha.
yes. And I think that a good resume, and when you and I don't want to imply, but when you said from the perspective of a recruiter who doesn't have technical knowledge,
Uh-huh.
it kind of sounded a little bit like you were trying to suggest that an engineer who has technical knowledge would see your resume and be like, "Oh yeah, that's the guy. I need to hire him." It sounds like you were alluding to that idea. And I'm of the mindset that that wouldn't be the case. I'm of the mindset that if your resume can't even get past, I'm of the mindset that if your resume doesn't make sense to a non-technical recruiter, then it won't make
Mhm.
sense to a technical engineer, in my opinion. I
Okay.
think a good resume should be simple enough such that non-technical recruiters can understand, okay, he did X, he did this amount of X and resulted in that. They might not know exactly what it is, what goes behind. Like, for example, if you were to say, "Oh, I uh built built 8 unit tests in order to assert the validity of edge cases in API." Um, uh, you know, wrote three out or developed 6 user interfaces utilizing HTML in order to, you know, do this and that. Allow for 50K plus users to input their registration information. Like if you say things like that, it's very concise in that I did this amount of, I did X, I did Y amount of X, and then I it resulted in these outcomes, numerical outcomes or non-numerical outcomes. And a non-technical person, like a recruiter, would say, "Oh, okay, I see it's clear. He did this. He mentioned this programming language that he used to do this. He did this amount of it. and it resulted in this. They might not necessarily know, okay, what a unit test is and how to write a unit test and all that stuff, but they at least know you did a unit test. They at least know you did 8 unit tests. They at least know the results of the unit test, even if they don't know the deep, intimate details like an engineer would.
Yeah.
That's the point that I'm trying to portray. I don't think you should even have the mindset of, oh, a non-technical person didn't understand my resume and that's why I'm not getting into the companies. No, I mean, you need to make sure that non-technical and technical people can understand the work you're building, because when you're working in these companies, you're not only going to be interfacing with technical people, there are non-technical people who you also need to interface. Like the CEO of whatever company, they're not going to know the intimate details about unit testing and user interface. They're not going to know the intimate details about it, but then they have a broad enough idea. And that same thing goes for hiring managers. Same thing goes for, product managers, designers, all, like, you're working with people who are different levels of technicality. And
Yeah.
I think you need to be able to express what you've done to all of them.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But one thing like I mentioned before, I do like the fact that you're using numbers, because that's the number one critique I have on people's resumes: quantitative data, quantitative data, quantitative data. But it sounds like you know that and you used a lot of that. So that's really good. But I would just recommend try to formulate them in terms of what you did and how much of it you did, and then the result of
Okay.
doing it. You kind of lead with the result, and then when you talk about what you did, you're a bit vague with it. 3 new fully accessible user flows comprising of 50 reusable UI components based on design patterns and workflows. It's still, it's like, I feel like you're trying to make it super technical and generic or whatever, and I'm like, you don't need to do that. Like,
Okay.
you could say, oh, okay, you created 3 new user flows. You could say, oh, I built 8 on-click handlers in order to handle user feedback onto my app. 50 reusable UI components. You could say, oh, I built 50 React components to use in different places on the UI in order to blah blah blah. Like,
Okay.
boosted user experience by 15%. And then it's like, how do you even measure that? How do you boost user experience by 15%? That's not like,
By the feedback we were getting on our email support, so people were liking the new changes that we pushed on to the application.
okay, so I would I think you can reword that, because I see that, I'm like, what are you talking about, boosted user experience? But if you say, oh, resulting in 15% increase in user, I don't know, what would you say to express that? User satisfaction increased by 15%.
Okay.
Something like that, like where you're specifically saying what went up by 15%. Because user experience, like, what is that? I'm not sure what that means. And I feel like most other people wouldn't know what that means. In terms of the ordering of your resume, and this is personal preference. You can choose whether you take this advice or not. I like to have education right at the top,
Okay.
because that's very important. Like, for many like, I know Amazon, for example, for many of their roles, if you don't have a bachelor's in computer science, like, they're not even gonna look at you.
Okay.
So not all, but it's like one of those unspoken rules, because if you look at all the people who are software engineers at Amazon, they all have at least a bachelor's in computer science. You happen to have one, it seems, but you
Yeah.
kind of hide it underneath. And I don't think, and I think you also said something related to, oh, I have experience in India and they don't count my Indian experience. I don't know about all companies, but I know that there are certain companies that don't necessarily care where you get the experience.
Okay.
And I don't want you to necessarily just start thinking, oh, because I'm Indian, these companies don't value my experience, because most of these companies have a large amount of Indian employees.
Yeah.
including the last company I was working at, where like most of my team was Indian and most of my team
Okay.
was educated in India. And then they came here to work at Amazon, or they're working at Amazon in
Mm,
India and came here. Whatever their situation was, companies are not like companies do value the experience, but you just have to
mm.
present it in a way that they understand that you have the experience, right? And I just don't think you presented it well. Um, so yeah, that's my opinion on that.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess and back to ordering, I'd put the education at top. I'd put technical skills underneath your education. I would put I'll put your technical experience, I'll put your work experience underneath the skills, and then projects would go underneath your work experience. And
Okay.
then you might even consider having a set. I don't know if you do any volunteering or if you were in any clubs while you were at master's program, bachelor's program, if you were any clubs, leading any clubs, anything like that, volunteering, won any awards, any special
Mhm.
certificates, different things like that that don't necessarily fit within work experience or projects, I might include in a little bottom section as well.
Okay.
Um, yeah, is there but yeah, I mean, I like how you separated out. I feel like you read like a lot of the stuff that you have on your resume. Like I recommend to other people. So I think it's really good that you separate out languages, frameworks. You have the different databases you've worked with, developer tools. I think that's excellent, 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 excellent. That's really good, and I think it should pay dividends. With your courses, with your education, you don't really indicate what types of courses you did within your education. So whether you studied
Okay.
algorithms, data structures, discrete math, linear
Mhm.
algebra, all this stuff, you should be including. You should be a section underneath each degree saying like relevant courses. And then you could say, oh, okay,
Mhm.
algorithms. And then if you in algorithms, you use Python for algorithms course, you could put in parentheses, oh, Python next to the algorithms course.
Mhm.
To just let them know, like, yo, like I have these degrees, but in these degrees, I was studying, impactful stuff. Because you know how some people can have a degree, two people can have the same degree, but then one person was actually taking the real classes. They were going above and beyond linear algebra. They wanted to know quantitative and all that stuff. And then someone was just like, okay, I'm just going to take the mandatory stuff and then easy electives. So I think that's good to distinguish yourself. And then also, you went to college in another country. So
Mhm.
it's hard to quantify, it's hard to compare Indian college versus American college versus all these other colleges. The way
Mhm.
that you compare it is showing, okay, these are the courses that I studied that would be relevant to you. Because
Okay.
I don't know what you're studying in an Indian college. Do you take a data structures class? Do you
Oh yeah.
take discrete math? Do you take all these courses? Well, say it. You say it on your resume. Um, yeah, I know some people who went to University of Mumbai actually. Um, but yeah. Yeah, I mean your resume is, a good foundation. I would, order some things around, but it looks pretty good.
Okay, cool. I have one more question. So,
Yes.
um, do you see the skills section below each experience that I've mentioned, the skills that are used in uh, that position?
Yeah, I don't think you need
So,
that.
would you recommend me doing this, or should I just blend in the skills with all the bullet points and not have a separate
You sh-
skills section?
I would say blend in the skill. I mean, you could try both out, right? If you
Okay.
try this resume out, if it's getting you the type of feedback you want, then try it a different way. But I would say no, you shouldn't have a solely dedicated skill section. Within each of your bullet points, when you're saying what you did, you should be including
Uh-huh.
what, the language, and it's not, language isn't the most important thing because a lot of these companies they'll retrain you anyways. But I think it's good to mention it in certain instances, like JavaScript. Here you could say created 10 on-click handlers quote in parentheses JavaScript, JS. You don't have to put the whole word JavaScript, but you can put JS in order to handle blah blah blah. Like
Okay.
MongoDB, you could say, oh, created 3 new documents in order to handle different types of data structures or whatever. Git, all that stuff. RESTful APIs, created, 3, APIs, REST in parentheses. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
But all of these uh, YouTube videos or LinkedIn articles like really focus on the point that you should increase the number of keywords in your resume. So if I,
Yes.
for example, substitute JavaScript with JS, will that count in the ETS or will it just skip over it?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's good to well, you would hope that these well, for one, you have JavaScript on your resume under technical skills.
Yeah.
I would say put JS in parentheses in order to save space because you seem to have, you have a lot of different experiences. Yes, they do use software to scan your resume for certain keywords, but you have more than enough. Look, just look at this section. Like you have, if they don't catch the keywords here, and then when you start including them, JS, React, but Python, like you'll insert them into different places on your resume. Um, it should catch it there, but I wouldn't just over opt because like there's a natural way and then there's over optimizing it. So
Yeah.
now hearing you say that, hearing you say, oh, you watch YouTube videos about blah blah blah. Now it makes me think, oh, are you over optimizing for these keyword searches because you think that's gonna
Mm.
help you out a little bit more? And then it has me rethinking, oh, now you have the skills section underneath. Are you just trying to get as much keywords as possible? And recruiters and eng managers look out for that because oftentimes I remember someone told me this while I was in college as an intern. They were like, yeah, like a lot of people, instead of saying what they did specifically on their resume, they'll say, oh, utilize React, Node, Spring Boot, this, that, keyword to do this. Utilize Mongo, this, that. And you could tell that they're just trying to pad their resume with all these keywords as opposed to specifically saying what they did. I think that's more important than the keywords. While the keywords are important.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think over optimizing the resume might get it through the ATS, but once it reaches the recruiter or the manager, it'll fail over there.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly that. And then also it's like about once you get your resume to a good point, then it becomes about the interview, right? At this point,
Yeah.
I feel like it's easy to get an interview. Now it's just about it's easier to get an interview. Now it's hard to pass the interview. But yeah, I would say, definitely clean up that whole stuff with the intern and like make the
So,
dates very explicit with your education and add those courses. And then, you know, see the cards where they fall.
okay. So should I maybe uh, like remove the senior software engineer position if it's like having a negative effect on?
No, I would say here, look, let me show you my resume. Let me stop the share.
Okay.
I don't think it's wrong to have that because that was your title.
Yeah.
You're being authentic. I think instead you should enumerate the different positions you had at the company because it just looks weird to see that you were just a senior software engineer like a year like whatever amount of time after
Yeah.
being an intern.
Yeah. That's
That
right.
doesn't make any sense to most people. So here, look, let me show you this. Once I get to pull this thing up, and I do have to head out soon. But here we go. So can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay, let me try to
Okay.
zoom in a bit. Okay, so if you look at my resume, um, at the top you see, the different links and all that stuff. Then you see education sections, GPA, you see Bachelor of Science, you see when I graduated, my major, bootstack program, and then you also see the relevant courses, data structures, algorithms. OOP, blah, blah, blah. Then I put some languages that are maybe less obvious, design implementation, Java, add some technical skills. Mind you, I haven't updated my resume in a while, but and I don't work at Amazon anymore, but it's my most recent one that I have on this resume.
Uh-huh.
But it's not the best example, but if you see like when I was at Etsy, created 3+ graphs, this 5+ tests per feature to give myself blah blah blah. We see complete over 40 tickets for the API of the Buy on Etsy app. Leverage Memcache to speed up subsequent shopping cart loads by 29 milliseconds. Here, if you see this one, wrote a validator with 2 unit tests in order to fix server-side bug, blah, blah, blah. Wrote 6 controller methods, Ruby, to flesh out interactions, and blah, blah, blah. Broke down project into 7 small pieces of functionality. Different things, created 2 Jenkins pipelines to allow for blah, blah, blah. So I'm saying, oh, I did this. This is how much of it I did, and this is the purpose of what I did, why I did it. Wrote 10 JUnit test cases across 2 projects using their cert lab. So a recruiter might not understand what JUnit is, a cert library is, but the engineer will know. But the recruiter will at least know, okay, he did 10 of something, and it went through our software, and we know that this is one of the skills that they're looking for: JUnit testing, blah blah blah. So
Got it.
yeah, and then leadership activities at the end. And this is not, of course, there's a lot of improvements I can make on my own resume, but I also I don't really rely on just direct applying to jobs anymore, because I use LinkedIn, this and that. And so but if I wanted to apply to a job, I would need to make sure that I'm like, I could even critique the same critiques I'm giving to you on your resume and other people. I could use on my own resume. Like, I don't have any numbers here.
Yeah,
I'm not expressing everything that I individually did. But on my LinkedIn, it's a little bit more information about what I've done and all that. It's more updated.
got
But
you.
yeah,
Good, yeah. Yeah, that was good looking at your resume. I got some better understanding now.
yeah. And and also, did you see the fact that I had Etsy divided? I had Etsy
Yes.
Software Engineer 2, Etsy Software Engineer 1, and the dates
Uh-huh.
associated with it. So they know, because it looks good. Like, you're senior software engineer, but you also, more important than senior software engineer, is you got promoted twice at that company.
Uh-huh.
That looks
Yes.
really good to any employer. They're like, whoa, this guy got promoted twice within a span of 3 years. Why did he get promoted twice? What did he do? What's so special about this guy that made him get promoted twice? And that's the type of question that they ask. Those are the type of questions you want them to ask when
Okay.
they're reading your resume. You don't want them to ask, when did he even graduate? How much experience? Like, you don't want them to ask that. You want them to ask why this guy, this company that he worked for, sees him so valuable. What makes him so valuable? Let me interview him and find out for myself to see if he really is valuable, right? So make those updates, and I'm sure you'll have success with applying.
Cool, cool. Thank you so much. This was really productive.
No problem. Any other questions or anything like that?
Nothing as of now. I'll shoot you an email in case I do get stuck somewhere.
Okay, sounds good. I'll also send you this article I wrote on resumes for software engineers, which basically kind of lays out a lot of the stuff that I was saying, and
Okay,
it structures it in a certain format. And maybe you find value from it, and yeah.
cool. Great. Thank you so
All right,
much.
no problem. Take care.
You too. Bye.
All right, bye.